This is the second installment of the Joe McMoneagle lecture as we continue to build a lexicon of presentations by important figures that have dedicated their lives to research into unexplained phenomena. Joe McMoneagle is one of the most prominent remote viewers of the Stargate Project program, and in this second half, courtesy of Arias Hypnosis, he takes us through remote viewing experiences of a few selected UFO encounters, cases he could trust because he knows they are real and absolutely alien in origin, in the words of Joe McMoneagle. The cases include Japan Airlines Flight 1628 in November of 1986 over Alaska, the 1975 Malmstrom Air Force Base incident, and as you may know, Malmstrom is the home of multiple nuclear missile silos, ready to fly at a moment's notice. The object interfered with the missile's readiness by changing their target coordinates. The third case examines the 1973 Clearwater Lake incident, a future topic for Project Bluebook. The lecture is followed by a fascinating Q&A session that features philosophical conversations about the creation of life and the source of life energy, as well as featuring a surprise appearance by the late great UFOlogist Robert O. Let's listen to Joe McMoneagle.
I took some specific UFO events and I wrote those out on 3x5 cards and I threw those in the pile. And I put each of those 3x5 cards into a opaque envelope that you can't see through. And I put all those in one of those big green leaf bags. See those big green leaf bags? And I shook it up and put it in the corner of my office. And every day I'd take that green leaf bag and I'd shake it up and I'd pull a card out or an envelope and I'd put it up on my computer and I'd remote view it and I'd type out a paragraph or a page or I'd do a sketch or do whatever. And then I'd open the envelope, and if the question or whatever in the envelope matched whatever I had done, I'd file it and I'd tear up the card or I'd staple it to the data and file it. If it didn't, I'd put the card back in another envelope, stick it back in the leaf bag, and destroy the data. And I did that for 4 years. That's how I got the data for Ultimate Time Machine. That's also how I got the data for what I'm going to show you. So it was kind of hard collecting the data. It was the only way I could stay blind to the material. You get enough of that and you pretty much stay blind. So the trick was finding real UFOs to target. I wanted real UFOs, things I could trust. The first one I picked was November 17, 1986, 1710, Japan Airlines 747 cargo plane over Alaska. There's only 3. I'm going to read them to you because you'll understand why I picked them. I wanted things that I absolutely knew were alien craft, not possibly ours, possibly theirs, possibly somebody else's. I wanted real alien craft. On November 17, 1986 at 1710, airline officer Kinju Terauchi, who was piloting a 747 cargo plane, first saw what he at first thought were lights coming from a military aircraft. During the next half hour, he and his crew realized that things of an unearthly nature had joined them in the skies. The pilot, first officer, and flight engineer saw 2 lighted structures about the same size as the body of the DC-8 jet. In Terauchi's words, moving about 1,000 feet in front of their cargo plane. Terauchi's radio communications to Anchorage Flight Control were strangely garbled, but enough got through that Anchorage urgently contacted a nearby Air Force radar station to see what they were picking up. At various times during the event, the UFOs were tracked by the 747 onboard radar and by the Air Force ground radar confirmed. As the sky darkened, the UFOs paced the 747 and were finally lost in a distant horizon. Then a pale white light appeared behind the aircraft, silhouetted against the lights on the ground. It looked like an immense Saturn-shaped object the size, Terauchi estimated, of 2 small aircraft carriers. He thought it was a mothership that had carried the 2 smaller objects themselves of no small size. The Anchorage radar was recording the object's presence all along. For the first time, the crew felt fear. By now, the aircraft was running low on fuel, and the captain requested permission to land in order to escape. The UFO finally vanished off radar at 1739. That's obviously an alien craft. So I targeted that one. November 7th, 1975, Malmstrom Air Force Base, Great Falls, Montana. On November 7, 1975, remote electronic sensors at Malmstrom Air Force Base, home of more than 20 Minuteman missiles, indicated that something had violated site security. 2 officers were monitoring the signals called site security, who in turn dispatched a helicopter and a sabotage alert team to investigate. As the SAT team approached the area in question, they could see an orange glowing object. As they slowly closed in, they could see that the object was tremendous in size. They radioed to the launch control facility and informed them that they were witnessing a brightly glowing orange football field-sized disc. The SAT was ordered to proceed. They refused to do so. Now, I don't know a SAT team that's ever refused an order, except this one. The object started to rise slowly, and when it reached 1,000 feet, it was picked up on radar by NORAD, and as a result, 2 F-106 jet interceptors were launched immediately. As the jets approached, the object shot away vertically and was last seen on radar at 200,000 feet. The operators at Launch Control Facility noticed that the missiles were indicating that they had been tampered with. After a series of checks, it was established that all the missiles had their target coordinates changed. That's obviously an alien craft. And the Clearwater Lake, Missouri incident, because it's a favorite of mine. So those are 3 I stuck in my leaf bag. I thought, what the heck? Those are definitely alien. I wanted to know more. This is the reason why I went out of my way to make sure I was targeting alien craft. This is a target. I used to have remote viewing get-togethers. I call them get-togethers. Back in 84, 85, 86. This is the copy of a target done in July of 85. This actually was drawn by someone as a target. That's all they drew. It was a double blind. The target was in a double wrapped opaque envelope. So I can know what the target was. Cool, huh? Everybody jumped on it. UFO, aliens. The problem was, I will tell you the data that went along with this. They said, I'm getting a UFO, but it's really weird because when I went on board, it had normal instrumentation, just like a jet. And there were 2 guys in military uniforms. They said, you don't belong here, get off. Interesting, huh? And I saved that. I kept it in my desk drawer. And when the first FY-117 was shown on television, I ran to my desk drawer and got that out. And it looked just like the first shots they showed us on television when they rolled it out of the hangar. I went, whoa, is that cool or what? She even put wheels on it, for God's sake. That's how you can, I mean, we're mixing data all the time. That's why I really wanted to make sure I got alien crap. So, April 19, 1998, squares within squares. That's the first result I got, which I found very interesting since I spent so much time in an opaque white cube. Squares within squares. I've also gotten telephone booths. I've been inside telephone booths, or telephone booth-like places, glass rooms inside glass rooms. I think probably it's a confounding place. It's a place designed to confound. It may even be a trick of the mind that they play, designed to muddle our senses. Trying to target a UFO, it may even be a screen. I said that remote viewers can't be blocked. You can't be. I didn't say you couldn't be deceived. One of the ways that you hide things from remote viewers is by hiding them within things that look similar. If you want to hide one of these from a remote viewer, what's the best place to hide it? In a pile of them. So one of these cubes is probably real. The rest aren't. One of the opaque cubes is probably real. The rest aren't. One of the aliens is probably real. The rest aren't. That's the best place to hide. You got to think of that. It's the other reason why remote viewers cannot be wedded to an idea. You have to stay completely unbiased in your data. You can't come to conclusions about the data. You can't say automatically they're from Gemini or Syria or wherever. You can't automatically assume anything about your data, because if you do, you're dead in the water. You will automatically start being prejudiced towards your data. April 6, 1998. The first line up here, I started out with, right here, cave. And I crossed it out and wrote analytic overlay. I actually thought I was drawing a picture of a cave originally. It was so big. This is the image of a human being, to give you an idea of scale. I think the lower portion is drive. That's all drive unit. And it's some kind of vehicle. I'm getting I always say a taste of these metals. It's approximate size. Weight, this is millions, 1.5 million pounds. It's really huge. And I think what this is probably an empty transport. I think all the really big ships are all motherships. They're all transport ships. And I don't think they do anything other than beam things in and beam things out. I think all their vehicles are intradimensional. They're time machines. They're portages. They come and they go. And I think the only time we see them is when they're coming and when they're going. The rest of the time they have an envelope or a way of hiding. Or they're just not here. They come and they go. That's their only function. They're carriers. It's the smaller ships are the ones that stick around. They're the ones that are brought in and leave, or left here rather. Those are the ones that we actually see more of. But the big ones, the motherships, are the ones that come and go. They're the ones that carry things in and carry things out. The transport vehicles. That's my sense of it anyway. This one's a little hard to see. This is kind of a figure 8, but it kind of waffles around the whole area. And this is, that word there is corona. It creates a corona around the vehicle. And that's actually the vehicle, I think. It's a sketch I was doing. And I think that figure 8 is kind of a force field of some kind. That's a larger sense of it. And what it does is it creates you can't read the writing, I know. That's a corona. And that right there is, I call that a singularity. And that's a larger figure 8. And this narrows into the way it bends or twists space-time in some way. I'm not exactly sure how that works. It's just the way it feels or the way I sense it in the remote viewing. But that's the way the motherships come and go, maybe. I think they have 2 different kinds of drive. The star-to-star is the mothership, and the planetary is the smaller ships. They have the anti-gravity drives. Or better than anti-gravity, I think it's, they negate inertia, would be a better way to say it. By negating inertia, what that means is it's better than anti-gravity. When you negate inertia, all you have to do is flick your little finger and you just keep moving the opposite direction till you flick your little finger in the other direction. So it takes no energy at all to do miraculous things. If you have no inertia in your body, you can basically lean in one direction and you just keep moving in the direction you lean until you lean the opposite direction. It's a better mode of mobility. This is how a drive works, I think. I don't understand it, I just write it down. This is a negative side, positive side. There's some kind of turbine force that runs this way. This is a liquid metal in here, but the liquid metal is made up of something I call neutral liquid nanometal, for lack of a different word. And they're individual little fragments so small you can't see them, but they're almost can't see them. They're individually designed to create a field. And there's a centrifuge force that pushes them to the outside of the field in some way. Maybe that's meaningful to somebody. Like I said, I just produce the data. I don't worry about how it works. Maybe that's meaningful to somebody. Somebody will get the tape and go, oh yeah, that helps. I don't know. Maybe it's a way of producing the corona or something. Alien sleeping pod. When you get inside the ship and you start looking for aliens, you almost never see one. And I think that's a deliberate problem. I think they know when you're looking at them or trying to look at them. The interesting thing about an alien sleeping pod is that I'm not sure if it's used for sleep. I'm not sure if that's what it is. My sense of it is it might be a rejuvenation pod or a sleeping pod or a hideout. I don't know what it is. But I do know that that's what they wear. That's a suit of some kind, a skin of some kind, an environmental unit of some kind when they're not in that pod. It's kind of interesting. The only other part of an alien I've ever seen is their hand on a control. It looks very much like our hand, the difference being it's long and it's thin and it has very ugly nails. very pointed, very narrow. Wouldn't want to get in a cat fight with them unless I was armed. But they're very gentle with them. That's my sense. I've never seen a whole alien outside of a suit. I think a very tiny fraction of UFOs are alien aircraft. Very small fraction. Maybe 0.25%. I think the vast majority of UFOs are home built. The reason I say that is because of all the damage they do. I think the actual alien craft are detuned to our time-space. So they don't do a lot of damage to our time-space. Except when they actually make contact with it, which is very rare. I think they're only visible when they're morphing in and out of our time-space. They deliberately avoid us otherwise. I think they make contact individually. They have a sense of who's open to contact and who isn't. And it's not who's open in the sense of who will really want to talk to them, but who's open in the sense of who's not going to run off and get something and whack them to death. Or who's not going to get ugly, or who's not going to have a coronary when they actually see one. Or who isn't going to turn them into see what I got, or turn them into a mystical being or whatever. I think the larger ships are transports only. I think all of their ships are not built, they're grown. I think they're actually grown like crystals. I got a lot of remote viewing data on the ship's construction, but it's impossible to display. You can't draw it. It's even difficult to talk about. The ships communicate with the occupants. It's almost like organic or chemical in some way, neurological in some way. They actually grow the ship on a molecule-to-molecule basis. They're so light and intricately strong, like the structure of a bone would be. Everything on board the ship is intricately tied to their space-time. In other words, when they're here, it's still tied to their space-time, not ours. So it's very difficult for us to relate to it and them to relate to us in a space-time sense. And everything on board is mentally tied to their ship and to each other. So they know more about what's going on within their ship and within each other. So they're very sensitive to when they've been invaded by another entity. We've never seen an alien that is not wearing a suit. So when you see the guys with the funny eyes and a little slit for the nose and a little slit for the mouth, that's a suit. That's an environmental suit. You're not seeing the alien. And the reason why you're not seeing the alien is because they're probably butt ugly. Yeah, I mean, what's your reaction in most cases when you see that big, hairy, ugly cockroach? They understand that we have deep-seated emotional reactions to some things. They understand that. And so they're not going to show us what they look like. There's probably few human beings on the planet that have ever seen a truly stripped down alien. They know that we probably couldn't handle it yet. It's probably why we won't have a full species-to-species contact for a long time, because they see what we do and we react to other humans of different color or different culture or different religion. I mean, they watch our TV. I mean, it's sad, but it's true. So we see aliens in suits. And that's why they make contact with us as individuals, in the hopes that maybe they can alter what's going on. I covered my last item. Piece of cake. He's in Pakistan. Piece of cake. For just a little operating money, I'd go get him.
Hi. From your experience with the military and the program, I'd like to know whether there's been any study of the possibility of alternative timelines in our physical reality, if you like, and whether there's the possibility of any bleed through, if you like, from these alternative timelines into ours, which might sort of corrupt any results, you know.
I'll give you my philosophy on time. For me, all of time is an illusion. So, in my cosmology of time, all time is. That means from the very beginning of time to the very end of time, all possibilities for everything that could ever be or ever could have been is. So when you talk about all probabilities, they all are. They all exist. So that opens the door to multiple incarnations. So I believe in multiple incarnations, but not multiple reincarnations. So I believe that rather than being reincarnated 10,000 times, I believe I'm living 10,000 lives simultaneously. Okay, so is there a possibility for bleed through of information? Absolutely. Is there a possibility of one interfering with the other? Only in so much as it would affect my decision making. Does that make sense?
Can you expand on that?
Well, you know, people always say, well, if you make a prediction based on remote viewing and it happens, then everything's preconceived. And that can't be true. It's just a lucky guess. If I make a prediction and it doesn't happen, then I'm just simply wrong. Or you can look at it another way. If you make a prediction and somebody says, well, okay, we just simply will do something to make that not happen, then your prediction was wrong. Or you know, we altered the future. And my answer to that is, no, I was just simply wrong. You didn't do anything to change it. I mean, you make more out of remote viewing and predicting than it actually is. It's just simply making a good wild guess. I mean, it's not a big deal.
Thanks.
Joe, I have admired your work for many years.
Thank you.
I have talked to a lot of remote viewers who know you well, and I know that you're highly regarded and respected. On your extensive travels throughout the universe, I have only one simple question. Have you ever, in those extensive travels, like Bob Monroe made regularly, have you ever encountered what you would think of as the original creative source?
There's a lot of evidence for what I call the grand designer, or the grand engineer. There's a lot of evidence for the originator, or I wish I could say that I have. I've seen so much evidence for God, but I have not seen God. But in my first near-death experience, I had a classic near-death experience in 1970, where I came out of the tunnel and was enveloped by a white light. And for many, many years, I called the white light God, because it was the most all-encompassing feelings of purity and completeness that I had ever felt. And it was just, I just had never felt so totally loved and complete in my whole life. And the problem was, I had another near-death experience in 1985. And in the second near-death experience, I was not allowed to go to the white light. I was only allowed to see it from a distance. There were some entities that kept me local. And as much as I wanted to go to the white light, I was not allowed to. I was only allowed to view it from a distance. The problem was, in the second experience, viewing it from a distance, I could see the white light had edges. And it created a huge philosophic problem for me. In my definition of God, the beginning and the end, the grand creator cannot have edges. So I had a huge philosophic problem to deal with. So I went back over all my feelings I spent a year and a half cooking on that. And the conclusion I came to was that what the white light probably is what I call the totality of self. It's what we become when we're no longer physical. It's the energy body, the energy being that we truly are when we're not physical. It's a summation of all our lives that come together. It's the reason we become sure that we know the answer to the universe. It's a summation of our knowledge. And if as an energy being, if that's what we feel as an energy being, then whatever created us, if there is a God, must be way and above, beyond that. So for me to understand what God is, I'm going to have to understand more about what the totality of self is, what I am. And as a being, I haven't begun to scratch the surface of that. And as a being, to even remotely think that I exist alone in a universe filled with life, teeming with life, to think that I know anything about it is insane. And it does dishonor to the idea of God to stand up and say, I worship God, when I don't even understand the limits of what I am and what the rest of life is. It does a disservice. So my goal is to try to figure out more about what and who I am and how I can be a better human being, and find out how to interact more with the rest of life, whatever that term means, in the universe. And then by doing that, maybe honor whatever that grand engineer is. But there is evidence there is a grand engineer. I think other life out there understands it better than we do. I don't know if that answers your question.
Joe, that does answer a lot of questions. In my own summary, I think you know a hell of a lot more about the final question than you would admit. And Joe, thank you very much.
Thanks. Appreciate it. I can't hear you.
That was so profound that this will sound mundane, but have you ever...
Can you bring that down?
Thank you, that was very profound, and this will sound mundane, but have you ever done like in a double-blind controlled study, a thing where you were tasked to know what was in the envelope and you did your drawing? And then
Can you bring it? I can't hear you.
Oh, okay, have you ever been tasked to do... Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry. Have you ever been tasked to do something that was in the envelope and you did your drawing and it was correct, but then you found out that that actually occurred after you did the drawing, where they went and put whatever it was in the envelope after you did your remote viewing, which would confirm for me the collapse of time, you know?
I'll tell you a cute story. One of the problems we have in the lab is that in many cases we deal with hard-nosed scientists, and in a lot of cases we like to borrow things from other labs and borrow cooperation of other labs, in many cases overseas. We've done a lot of research in Hungary and Russia and some other places, and many of these scientists, they've heard about remote viewing, but they're not completely convinced. And we have a little travel kit on our computer that we carry. When I say we, Dr. Edwin May and I carry a little travel kit on our computer. What it is, it's a remote viewing program, and it contains a few hundred targets. They're pictures, locations all over the world, and these are picture targets, and they're in a file. And the way the program works is we can actually do a remote viewing demonstration where we randomly select a target, and the target can be a picture, any picture out of the file. And it's an ironclad demonstration where it can't be messed with. Once you initiate the program, you do the remote viewing, you enter the data, and you have to enter the data first before it gives you the picture. So you can't cheat. This is a really difficult thing to do. Well, there's a little hook to the demonstration that we don't tell anybody about, and we let them run it. We give them the computer, we let them run it. They enter all the data, and everything's done. You do the remote viewing and all this sort of thing. And at the very end of the demonstration, when you do the remote viewing, they have a last button they push, and where it displays the actual target. Just before that, the computer produces 6 targets, one of which is the real target, and they get to judge. They look at your data that you've drawn, and they get to pick, based on your drawing, which ones they think is the actual target. They judge it. They go, based on your drawings, I think this is a first place match, this is a second place match, this is a third place match, and they actually enter their judging. So when all that's done and filed, after they've judged the actual results, then they hit the last button and it says, this is the real target. So they can see how good you were, whether it was a first place match, second place match, that sort of thing. And when they hit that last button, it gives them the real result. Well, what we don't tell them is up until they hit that last button, the target doesn't exist. Okay? The random number generator does not generate the random pick until the last button's picked, the last button's hit. So those 6 judges, those 6 targets that are randomly selected, one of those will be the actual target. But the computer hasn't picked which one yet. So they don't even know. The computer doesn't even know which the target actually is until they get to the last button punched. And in many cases, most cases in fact, the remote viewing's done, the judging's done, everything's done up until that last button push, okay? In almost all cases, it's a first place match and they select the target by hitting the button.
Thank you.
Joe, a couple